Penn State should want to face Georgia and not Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of the show. Going live here. Happy New Year, everybody. Here's to a fantastic 2025. And I think Penn State should rather want to face the Georgia Bulldogs as opposed to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And I have my reasoning, but this is a live show, so you are part of the conversation as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the live chat, down in the comments section. And if you're new here, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, Georgia versus Notre Dame. This is all going to play out in the All-State Sugar Bowl. And before I get into any analysis, I do just want to say I hope that everybody is okay with what had happened down in Louisiana, a horrific attack. Just God bless the families and those who are affected, and everybody just praying for everybody's safety moving forward. In terms of talking about this football game for Notre Dame versus Georgia, I do expect Notre Dame to win this game. But they lost to Northern Illinois. Georgia's from the SEC, strength of schedule, all that stuff. I'm not denying that. But when I look at the matchup, it is about matchups. It's about X's and O's, how these teams play out on paper. And Notre Dame is the better team in this case and would be a more difficult matchup for Penn State as opposed to Georgia. Let me tell you why I think so. So there's going to be a misconception that Georgia is the more elite defense because of the way that they played over the past few years under Kirby Smart, that this Georgia defense is ferocious. And I'm not saying they're not good, that they're not great, but honestly, not to the extent that Al Golden has and Penn State fans know Al Golden, the way that he has Notre Dame's defense going is top 5 in the nation. This is a top 5 defense. Georgia is not quite that this year. They're still good. They're still great. They have tons of talented players, but they don't force as many turnovers. They're not getting as much pressure as these national championship teams. And I haven't even gotten to the fact that, hey, they have to replace Carson Beck with Gunnar Stockton, who is not the same caliber. He's a different type of quarterback. He's going to give you some more mobility. Carson Beck is a traditional pocket passer. But first and foremost, Notre Dame's defense is a good amount better than what Georgia has offered this season. When you look at turnovers, Notre Dame is phenomenal when it comes to forcing turnovers. They are good at just getting their hands on the football. 18 interceptions on the season, 11 fumbles recovered, 13 of them have been forced, but also 53 passes defended. So this Notre Dame secondary is by far one of the best that Penn State could see all season. I think they would be a challenge to Tyler Warren. I wonder how a Trey Wallace and an Amari Evans would do in that matchup. Would you be able to get something from a Julian Fleming, a Liam Clifford? Would Caden Saunders be able to help you as he come back from an injury? But I look at this Notre Dame secondary, and that is not a matchup that Penn State should be facing. And honestly, Georgia's secondary would be a formidable matchup as well. But it's the way, and so comparing it to Georgia, this season, Georgia only has 8 interceptions and 33 pass deflections. That is a vast number. That is a far margin between what Notre Dame has done this season and what Georgia has done this season. Now, they still do force into the same number of fumbles. They've recovered 11 this season. So in terms of a turnover margin, Notre Dame is significantly better, and the secondary is better at making plays. Like I said, Georgia's just not the same defensively. If you look at yards per play allowed, this is a team that is top 25. But comparatively, Notre Dame is top 3 in the nation in yards per play. So that's my first reason, is that Notre Dame's defense is going to be better suited against Penn State. The second reason is losing Carson Beck and having to go to Gunnar Stockton. We will see how he does against that Notre Dame defense. We will see how he does. But I think Carson Beck, there's a reason he was the starter and gives Georgia a better chance. But let me take this a step further. So Carson Beck wasn't the issue necessarily for the passing attack. Was he as good as people made him out to be as a potential number one overall pick or a surefire first round draft pick in next year's NFL draft? Maybe not. But he still has NFL intangibles. There's a reason that scouts did like him. It's his pass catchers. The wide receivers for Georgia have led the nation in drops this season. The pass catchers for Georgia are letting Carson back down. And then you take a step back to Gunnar Stockton. It's going to be a little more difficult for Georgia to be able to move the football. So you can sell out for the run. You can at least anticipate the ground game a little more because that's what they're going to have to lean on. Now, Gunnar Stockton is more of a mobile quarterback, but I just look at that group of Georgia receivers that they cannot be counted on. They cannot be counted on as much as you would like. And seeing what Notre Dame does have is now Georgia's pass catchers overall may be more talented, but they're still not executing. Notre Dame's pass catchers at least give you the ability where they are just able to execute. Maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but I like what I saw against Indiana in that cold weather, and maybe that has to do more so with Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard, I would take Riley Leonard 100 times over Gunnar Stockton. This is a veteran of the game. We're talking about the mobility here of a Gunnar Stockton. A Riley Leonard gives you a lot of playmaking ability. You can't trick him. I feel like Gunnar Stockton is going to be prone to that detrimental mistake, whereas Riley Leonard does not do that. He is one of the most cerebral quarterbacks in all of college football. You have to treat him like, and I know how the Ohio State-Oregon game just went down, but Dylan Gabriel does not make mistakes. Riley Leonard is like that too. He's been around college football for a long time, so you can't just easily fool him. You can't just bait him into a mistake. And when you have when you have the offense the way it does to go complement the defense, Riley Leonard isn't forced to, basically play hero type of football. He can be smart and conscious with his decisions, but he's already naturally like that. And I think he's a better dual threat quarterback than Stockton. So Notre Dame has the advantage here in defense, at quarterback, at pass catcher, in terms of execution, avoiding mistakes. Jeremiah Love's the best running back of the bunch. Trevor Etienne, Nate Frazier, they got a dynamic duo there, but I would take Jeremiah Love. I would personally take Notre Dame's offensive line slightly more than Georgia's. So just you start to add all those things up. Where I will give Georgia the advantage is that they are battle tested in overall. They've been here. This program has been here. Now players come and go, they cycle out. But Marcus Freeman is relatively new. So in that coaching matchup, let's see what Kirby Smart can do against Marcus Freeman. But it's also, you have to consider the coordinators. So while I agree that yes, Kirby Smart is going to give Georgia a favorable matchup, a favorable advantage anytime against any program, against any team, and that Georgia has been here. They know how this goes, even though players cycle through. But I also think about the fact that for Mike Denbrock and Al Golden, as I have mentioned, it's really more about the coordinator battles. So it's Georgia's coordinators versus Notre Dame's coordinators that are really going to decide this. And I like the supporting cast that Marcus Freeman has. It's kind of like with James Franklin. Oh, well, James Franklin's he'll lose any head coaching head-to-head battle. This season's been a lot different. James Franklin has outcoached Lincoln Riley and PJ Fleck in crunch time. Oh, but that's PJ Fleck. It still doesn't matter. That was a chess battle that in the past James Franklin has lost, and he's won those. But it also helps when you have two coordinators that are just built. They are, if they wanted to, they would be head coaches. So all of this kind of offsets each other. Yes, Kirby Smart's going to be a better head coach at this point in time than Marcus Freeman, but I look at the coordinator battles to watch for Notre Dame. So can Penn State beat either of them? Yes, they can. Yes, they can. We'll talk about that more. Get your questions, get your comments, your reactions to this, because if I'm Penn State, I would rather play Georgia in the Orange Bowl than Notre Dame. We'll talk about it more. Get your comments, reactions, and questions on the other side of this break. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets. That's right, $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, but also passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, how many catches are made, tackles, field goals. It's more than just spreads, money lines, and totals. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And again, welcome into this live show. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you so much for joining me here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Defense is playing with the spirit of legendary teams of the past. If we're talking about Penn State, Penn State is in a great spot. Penn State's in a great spot. We're going to have to see. The defense is really different with or without Abdul Carter. So we can talk about that. We can talk about that for sure. Happy New Year, everybody. Here we are talking about Notre Dame and Georgia. And I got to say, I know they lost to Northern Illinois earlier in the game, but that was early in the season, but that was a wake-up call for the Fighting Irish. And ever since then, they have really been playing well. Now, would I ever rank them above Penn State? No, I've said that because your resume, your schedule, the results do matter. But now we're in the postseason. None of that matters. When I look at this game on paper, I take Riley Leonard over Gunnar Stockton. I take the playmakers for Notre Dame's offense. I also do wonder, is Notre Dame's defense going to be the same? Because part of the reason the secondary can be so effective is because the defensive line gets pressure and at least wreaks havoc. Riley Mills is out for the season. He's finished. So that is an impact player for Notre Dame that going up against a talented Georgia offensive line, we will see how Notre Dame is able to adjust, how they're able to do better. I would also rather have my Penn State Nittany Lions play Georgia rather than Notre Dame. I've thought about this for the sake of entertainment purposes and for the sake of just historical implications. I feel like there is more, and that's, geographical reasons, historically. And Penn State Notre Dame just makes for a more interesting matchup. So for the entertainment value, for the juice that would go into this matchup, I know that, yes, Penn State played Georgia for a national title once upon a time. I get that, but there are more historical implications for a Penn State versus Notre Dame matchup in this expanded college football playoff. But neither matchup will disappoint at the end of the day. I think, like I said, from the perspective of that regard, the status around this game, Penn State versus Notre Dame would be absolutely more interesting, would be more intriguing. And I think Georgia's probably going to get a little bit of a bad rap here. If I just think about how Penn State, got lucky with SMU, Penn State got lucky with Boise State, and it's you didn't beat Georgia at full strength. They didn't have Carson Beck. You ended up playing against a team with Gunnar Stockton, the backup quarterback, instead. You're just going to get that. I honestly need to ignore that commentary because it doesn't make any sense. When do wins matter anymore in college football? Like, when do they start mattering again? Because the way I look at it is that Penn State beat a top 10 SMU team. Penn State beat a top 10 Boise State team on a neutral field. Boise State could have upset some other teams. We saw Arizona State take Texas down to the wire. Now, it doesn't help when your starting place kicker is missing chip shot field goals. Don't get me wrong. But Arizona State was down and fought its way back. Boise State, I wonder what Texas versus Boise State, how that would have gone down, because Texas did not adjust well with defending against Cam Scadaboo, so Ashton Gentoo, who logically I think is better, I wonder how that matchup would have gone. That's all I'm saying. If Texas had an upset scare against Arizona State, I think it's fair to say that they'd have an upset scare against a Boise State as well. I would absolutely love to see Georgia gives more ammo if Penn State beats Georgia, and we can say Big Ten is greater than the SEC. I think we can already kind of say that the Big Ten is greater than the SEC at this point in time. I don't know where I stand on that as far as, kind of taking moral victories for another program's success. I am worried about Penn State and how they play and how they perform above everything else. I'm not really, is it nice now to dunk on the SEC for losing all the bowl games that they did, and Alabama against a Michigan, right? They shouldn't have belonged. And then Illinois over South Carolina. Just seeing those results, again, Missouri beat and Iowa, but I'm not really concerned what Michigan does. It wouldn't have changed my mind one way or another. So yes, this banter about who's better, the Big Ten or the SEC, I guess is entertaining, interesting discourse, but I don't sleep better at night knowing that Michigan beat Alabama. It just kind of, it tells me that I'm seeing the right thing and seeing what the College Football Playoff Committee saw, and is that Alabama did not belong. And let's talk about this. If Penn State had played Alabama, that probably would have been bad news for the SEC, and the College Football Playoff Committee did them a favor by leaving them out. Because if you lose to a 7-5 Michigan team, and granted they have players in the portal, don't get me wrong, but that was not an Alabama team that was prepared. They lost to Oklahoma 24-3. That was everything I needed to see that the Crimson Tide did not belong. SMU would have beaten Alabama if you had a hypothetical play. And I see, I'm doing the same thing that the SEC supporters are doing. Well, on paper, Texas was a 14-point favorite against Arizona State, and that went to double overtime, and they were very close to losing that game. Very close. Point spreads, hypotheticals, the results on the field matter. And I'm concerned most with Penn State's. Happy New Year, Zach. I would agree with you on preferring to face Georgia. Not only do they have to replace their starting quarterback, but they aren't as well balanced of a team as Penn State. Mary, thank you for the comment. Happy New Year. Yeah, I just think Penn State has more to account for. If we're looking at the favorable matchup here, it's Georgia. I want Penn State to earn a victory regardless. They can't face Notre Dame. No, they can still beat Notre Dame. But in looking at both prospective matchups, you would want them to face a Georgia because Penn State is suited to play them the way that they are. I look at Penn State's kryptonite is an effective passing game. Notre Dame they have a balanced attack. Riley Leonard as a dual threat QB, Jeremiah Love as that workhorse back, and then the complementary running backs in the backfield as well. They don't have these all-star playmakers at wide receiver and tight end like a Texas, like an Ohio State. We don't have to worry about Oregon anymore. But what I'm getting at is that Penn State's defense, the secondary needs to prove to me, and probably prove to a lot of other people, that they can handle a wide receiver core, a Jeremiah Smith, and a Emeka Egbuka, and a Carnell Tate. Even though Penn State held them to 20 points, when it came down to plays that dictated the outcome of the game, Ohio State was able to throw the ball at will to pick up a 3rd and 8, or on a second behind the chains, on a 2nd and 12, and they were able to complete a pass that set them up for a 3rd and manageable. It's the game against Oregon in the Big Ten championship. And I know the Ducks are out, but I'm talking about this from Penn State's perspective. They had no answer for a Tez Johnson. The secondary can only cover for so long outside of A.J. Harris. So it is up to a Jalen Kimber, a Zion Tracy, or Tom Allen to find a way to scheme those guys better to help them succeed, because that is what is going to do Penn State in. But I look at Notre Dame, I look at Georgia, and they don't have that. They don't have this air raid team that can run up and down the football field at will and score in a matter of seconds. They both play complementary football because that's the way they're built, but Penn State is built to stop complementary football. They're also built to stop teams that have to run the ball. Georgia would have to run the ball. At least Notre Dame has the element of surprise where the quarterback can keep it. You have to account for Jeremiah Love. But they can also throw the ball, whereas Boise State could not do that as well. You take away, look how that happened. You take away Ashton Genty, and that's what ended up happening. So it was relatively, the reason these matchups are favorable for Penn State is because of the way they're built. It is not because Georgia can't do this or can't do that. It's because Penn State can take that away. Penn State is able to do that. They have playmakers that are able to stop the run, that are able to account for a mobile quarterback. But when I look at the secondary, that's Penn State's biggest weakness at this point. That is Penn State's biggest weakness at this point. We're going to take another break, get back into the comment section, and just talk about, how the Nittany Lions would actually match up, what they would need to do to beat either team, as we'll head into the next segment here on a live Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games are an incredible experience that bring fans together like never before, and the excitement of past playoff games have helped pave the way to create new memories with this updated format and extra teams involved. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks, and that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live into these kinds of events even easier than before. What does it do? It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. And if you are planning to go to the Orange Bowl and you're looking for tickets, you can go to the Gametime app or go to gametime.co on your browser to find the best deals for Penn State and either of Georgia or Notre Dame in that Orange Bowl. You can use Gametime to find tickets for any upcoming game, not just the Orange Bowl, and you can browse through the deal. You can browse through deals with a breeze. You can browse through deals as a breeze and find great value on all kinds of seats at the venues. They'll have super deals, amazing deals. Everything will be listed for you. Plus, there's no surprise fees at checkout. All the costs are up front, and you don't have to second guess on your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And let's wrap it up here. I saw the hypothetical spreads. Once again, we're here at the hypotheticals, but FanDuel is out in front of this. Penn State versus Notre Dame or Georgia. It showed that Penn State was a 1-point underdog. So this is about what I thought it would be. I thought Penn State would be maybe a 1-point favorite, or this would be a pick 'em. This is one of the most even matchups you're going to get. The line is also going to move based on the availability of Abdul Carter. So I think that's a good point to bring up here, is how Penn State would do with or without Abdul Carter. Do I like Penn State? First of all, can Penn State win without Abdul Carter? Yes. Is it going to be more of an uphill battle? Also, yes. Abdul Carter does a lot of things for this defense, does a lot of things for Tom Allen. It's not only his playmaking ability, it's not only just him one-on-one matchup with the left tackle, but it's the way that offenses, you take away that element of chess, of strategy, where you don't have to game plan for Abdul Carter. Amin Vanover and Smith Vilbert are capable, competent defensive ends, but not to the caliber of Abdul Carter. And it's okay to admit that. Those guys are solid. They are going to contend for spots on NFL rosters, but we know that Abdul Carter, conservatively, is a top 15 NFL draft pick. And honestly, I think you're getting value there if he sneaks out of the top 10. Abdul Carter can do so many things. He can line up on either side of the offensive line. He can line up over the center. You can drop him into coverage. You can have him be a quarterback spy. It is that the way that Penn State had planned to use Micah Parsons in his third and final season, that's what they're doing with Abdul Carter. It's that Abdul Carter is the true essence of a superstar. And if you take that away, even when Abdul Carter doesn't make the play, offenses are preoccupied with him. Where's 11? Is he here? Is he there? Do we need to move the running back over? Do we need the tight end to chip? And if you don't have that, if you're Penn State, or if he's not 100%, offenses don't have to take that as seriously because the threat is either neutralized or limited. So for Penn State, they're going to really have to get creative. Now they at least have 9 days. It's not your traditional 6 days and a quick turnaround like that. No, Penn State gets at least a little more than a week to figure out if Abdul Carter is going to be available. My gut says that he's going to play because this is a semifinal game. I don't think Penn State holds him out. I think Penn State was being cautious with how they approached it. They also probably felt pretty comfortable in the matchup against Boise State that we can rest Abdul Carter knowing that we will be able to still win this game convincingly. But against a Georgia, against a Notre Dame, and then if they win, right, an Ohio State or a Texas, I know the way Ohio State played, but I'm not going to count out Texas. Matchups matter. They struggled against Arizona State. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to favor Ohio State, but I can't just count. Look, everybody was counting out Arizona State and they made it a ball game. Texas can absolutely turn things around and make adjustments. Teams can make adjustments. But Penn State can still win these games without Abdul Carter. It's just going to be a lot more difficult. It's going to be a lot more difficult. We saw that Boise State, Maddox Madsen was able to have time in the pocket. There wasn't that same pass rush. But now, if you know that Abdul Carter's not going to be there, what blitzes can you design? What coverages can you design? Something that you maybe haven't shown on film. I'm just trying to look at the bright side of this. It makes Tom Allen's job a lot more difficult that you don't have your best playmaker. And to add insult to literal injury here, you don't have KJ Winston either. And that's what stings, because Penn State's defense would be one of the best in the country. They are top 10 still as it is, but I think they'd be in the conversation to be 1, 2, or 3 with KJ Winston and Abdul Carter both at full strength at this point in the season. Unfortunately, they don't have that, but that's where Tom Allen deserves a lot more credit. Really. For people calling for Tom Allen's job or don't think that he's a great defensive coordinator, he has done so much more under the circumstances. This defense was built the way it was supposed to be built. They had an entire blueprint with Abdul Carter and KJ Winston as that 1A and 1B superstar dynamic duo. And all of that was lost in the middle of Bowling Green. And then now you're getting into the games that matter most. It is a winner take all. And now you don't have Abdul Carter. I think people forget just how good KJ Winston was supposed to be. And then you lose Carter potentially. The arm did not look good. He wasn't really putting that much movement into it, that much weight on it. I hope that's just kind of the shock of the moment. We shall see. But Penn State has at least the element of surprise that they don't have to release an injury report and they can say that he's available. I don't think, unless it is truly a season-ending injury, a long-term injury that's going to affect his NFL draft prospects, I think Abdul Carter is going to suit up. I think they're going to approach this the way that they did with Denai Dennis-Sutton over the adjacent weeks after the injury against Wisconsin, where he's available and he's going to be used in strategic situations, but I don't think he plays 100% of snaps. If he does, Abdul Carter is superhuman, and that probably would be the nicest thing for Penn State at this point in time, for the Nittany Lions to take on this matchup, because it is truly the semifinal. See if I can jump back into the comments real quick. Notre Dame will blow out Georgia and the third best team in the Big Ten. Oh, we got some Fighting Irish fans in here. I don't know about a blowout. But I will say this is that Penn State's offense is going to have to step up. So it's honestly not so much about the defense. If the defense isn't going to play as much complimentary football, then Drew Aller, Tyler Warren, and the rest of those guys have to be on their A game, especially with because one way or another, you are facing a top tier defense. I think Notre Dame's is better than Georgia's this time around, but at its core, you are facing two defensive types of teams. Notre Dame is not an offensive team. Georgia's not an offensive team. These are defensive powerhouses just based on the way that their programs are built. Penn State passes for 30 more yards a game than Notre Dame. What are you talking about? I'm not sure I'm understanding the comment. Sorry about that. Defensive depth is getting really shallow. And that's why Penn State builds the way that it does. The foundation that they try to go through high school recruiting and then the transfer portal to bring in complementary parts. That's how you build depth. That is how you build depth, through high school recruiting, and then guys that are becoming those second and third year players, right? Then the fourth year players move on and the third year players step up and become those stars, right? Where are we right now? Abdul Carter, KJ Winston was supposed to be that. Jalen Reed, AJ Harris is becoming one of those superstar players. He's starting to move up in the ranks. And then, hey, Dejon Lane is waiting, right? So it's going to be an unsung player that we really haven't heard from defensively that might have to make a name for themselves. And not just like Zane Durant might have to be that player that truly takes over a game. And he's done very well to this point. He's shattered expectations outside of Penn State's locker room. I think Penn State fully expected Zane Durant to play the way that he has. But Zane Durant doesn't get enough credit, but I think he's going to have to take a step forward in this game to make up for a potential Abdul Carter absence. Same thing with Denai Dennis-Sutton. I mean, Vanover, Smith-Vilbert, all that workload transfers to the other guys that are doing the same thing that Abdul Carter does. And the linebackers, can we give a shout out to the linebackers? Because I think Dom DeLuca, Tony Rojas have played so much better down the stretch here in this 4-2-5 defense. Penn State, a Boise State team that does not turn the football over, forced 3 turnovers. Zachy Wheatley is still getting better game by game. So the defense, that's why I don't say, oh, Penn State doesn't have a chance without Abdul Carter. Is it more difficult? Yes. But because of those other players that they have behind them, A.J. Harris, Zachy Wheatley, Jalen Reed, Tony Rojas is getting better. Dom DeLuca is getting better. And you're not going from a third-year veteran superstar player to a true freshman. You're going to other veterans on the team. Me and Vanover's played a lot of college football. Smith-Vilbert's played a lot of college football. Denai Dennis Sutton on the other side has played a lot of college football. Penn State's defensively is still in an okay situation, but it's going to be up to the offense that is going to force Notre Dame, force Georgia into a shootout because they can. Penn State's offense can be built to do that. They can get into a shootout with these teams, but you have to be able to force Notre Dame and Georgia or Georgia into that situation. So I like Notre Dame tomorrow personally. Whether it's close, I don't know if it's going to be by a bunch of scores because Georgia, like I said, they still have Kirby Smart. This is still a disciplined team. They still have a bunch of 4 and 5 stars up and down the program. It is going to be an entertaining game, to say the least. And we'll see who comes out on top. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Notre Dame doesn't move on. But if that's the case, I like the way Penn State matches up against Georgia. But I think Notre Dame wins, and I think Notre Dame poses a more formidable matchup against Penn State. That's going to do it here on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thank you so much for checking out this episode and spending your New Year's Eve, spending your New Year's Day with me. Thank you. That really does mean a lot that you're spending your holiday here on these live shows here on Locked On Nittany Lions. If you're brand new to the show, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we will have more content around your favorite Penn State sports teams, talking more than just football. We talk basketball, wrestling here, all on Locked On Nittany Lions.